Hello, everyone, and welcome to another SEJ Marketing Think Tank webinar. And today we're going to be doing a really fun webinar. It's going to be about site audits. So we have a number of sites that were submitted to us. We were able to select a handful of sites that we were able to review in advance. And we are going to go through the sites with a handful of really smart minds in SEO and social media to provide guidance not only for the sites, but for all of you who are watching, so that you might be able to associate the same recommendations to your own site. I'm going to have on the webinar today with me Lauren Baker, founder of SEJ, and very well-known SEO expert, Kaitlin Ruling, who is also a part of SEJ. She handles a lot of the social media, as well as just recently got her dream job. So congrats to her on that. And so she's going to be moving on as well, but she's going to be talking about some of the social media and some of the SEO, I believe. And also we have Anna Crow, a regular feature writer and contributor, and part of our team here at SEJ as well. My name is Brent Satoris, and I'm going to be moderating, doing my best, but I'm going to let each of these three individuals kind of introduce themselves real quick. We have a slide for each of them, and then I'll jump into some housekeeping notes, and we'll go from there and get started. So first thing to mention real quick before we dive into all of that, if we want to represent and kind of showcase search engine nerds. We recently rebranded from marketing nerds to search engine nerds to really focus more on SEO and search marketing. And so we have a bi-weekly show every 2 weeks right now. We have a lot of really smart minds in there. So if you haven't checked it out, if you haven't had a chance, we're on iTunes and on Google Play. And there's a lot of previous episodes. There's a lot of coming episodes, and it's really helpful. It's really informative. There's a lot of really good information there. So I highly recommend jumping in and checking those out and subscribing. And if you feel like giving us a review, we are always appreciative to reviews. Lauren Baker, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just roll through each of you.
Hey, Brent, can you share your screen?
Brent. Yes, I can.
Thank you.
I can do that. Apologies, I thought that did that right from the start. All right. I'm using the new Google presentation things. Okay, go ahead, Lauren.
Great. Yeah, so this is Lauren Baker. I'm the founder of Search Engine Journal. Started this thing about 14 years ago. And today I'll be going over mostly technical SEO issues or improvements on the sites that we're looking at. So thanks, Brent.
Awesome. And next we have Kaitlin Ruling.
Hi, so I'm the social producer at Search Engine Journal, and I'm responsible for managing all of our social networks. I have been involved with SEJ for almost 2 years now, and we'll be moving on, as Brent mentioned, to work with the League of Women Voters as a communications manager over there. But my background's in public relations, and I've really had a focus over the last 6 or 7 years for social media strategizing for small businesses and grassroots organizations.
Awesome. And lastly, but not least, Anna Crow.
Hey guys, I'm Anna Crow, and I've been working with SEJ for a little bit over a year now, mostly working on long piece content. You might have seen a few site audits from me in the past. I'm really looking forward to doing this live site audit with you guys because I've been focusing a lot on technical audits. So I'll be adding a little bit more to what Lauren has to say. Thanks.
And my name is Brent Satoris. I am also involved with Search Engine Journal, and I'll be doing my best to moderate all of this. So I'm going to save time on my slide and jump right in. I do want to, before we jump into this poll, I do want to just give a little bit of information on kind of the webinar as a whole. During the entire webinar, if you have any questions, comments, or anything that you'd like to ask the group that's doing the reviews, you can utilize the question box within webinar. GoToWebinar. There's a little question box down there. You can ask your questions in there. We'll compile all those questions, and at the end of all the audits, we're going to kind of circle back and do a Q&A session where we'll answer all of that. We're also going to be tracking regularly, and if you're updating on Facebook, we request that you use the hashtag SEJ Think Tank. Again, that's all one word, SEJ Think Tank. We'll track that hashtag to look for any questions and for any discussion points. So definitely, if you want to use Twitter as much as you'd like there with that hashtag. We'll have one poll, which you can see on the screen now, and which we will start here in a second. We'll start now. What do you think a site should focus on first? From an SEO standpoint, oh no, I guess it could be anything. It could be SEO, user experience, or content. What do you think a site should focus on first? Again, SEO, user experience, or content? That's kind of a tough one. We're gonna let people get in some answers. This is tough for me even to answer. I kind of want to answer two different ways. So it'll be interesting to see what people say. Like I said, we're just going to give it a couple minutes and then we'll show the results. All right, I think we'll go ahead and shut that down and go ahead and show the results. And user experience. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. I kind of like that because I think in the past, Lauren, especially, you would have seen SEO be like the #1, but I like to see that people are thinking a little bit about user experience these days. Where did that go? So I do not see my screen anymore. Is anybody else there?
We're here. I see your desktop.
Okay. Yeah, that whole screen just went away. Right.
Try double clicking on it maybe.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank God. Okay, diving in. The first site that we're going to jump into and talk about is Grammarly. And so I'm going to go ahead and just keep my mouth shut and let the group comment on this site.
Thanks, Brent. I'll jump in first on this one and let Kaitlin and Anna jump in afterwards. First of all, Grammarly, it's pretty phenomenal, the fact that Grammarly.com ranks #1 for Oxford comma, and a lot of other grammar-oriented terms that have very high search volumes, which is pretty phenomenal. At the same time, one I guess compounding issue that I found looking through Grammarly is that parts of the site are secure with an SSL, like an HTTPS versus HTTP, and then some are not. So it looks like, and if anyone from Grammarly is listening right now or on the webinar, it looks like you may have gone through a transition from non-secure to secure recently and overlooked some internal links which are holding you down in terms of Google seeing that you're secure. And I see this a lot, really. For the most part, it looks like most of your internal links coming from your footer are still unsecure. So basically, you're making people and Googlebot or other robots go through an unnecessary 301 redirect every time they're hitting a link within your navigation or your footer, and then also some internal links on your site. So even though that you're trying to have a secure site, you're telling Googlebot to go to the non-secure version of the site. Then what's happening is your server is redirecting that user or bot to the new secure version. And this is happening probably tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of times per day. And I've talked to a lot of different hosting companies about this, and they've been like, look, 301s are great, but if you don't need them, change the link, right? Because just by changing these links, what's going to happen is it's going to be less 301s, less drain on the server. Your pages and site are going to load a lot faster, and you'll probably, what Google will see is that you'll uniformly secure your entire site across the board and stop sending people to unsecure versions of the site. So basically every link in your bottom footer right now is broken. So get those fixed. Also, congratulations on ranking #1 for Oxford comma.
Anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, I'll jump in for social media. Grammarly has done a great job of establishing itself on prominent social media channels. I love the amount of posts that are going out on all their social networks, and they have a fantastic number of followers across platforms. So it's showing that what they are doing is generally working. Also makes sense because it's an awesome tool that I use myself. But the only thing that I would say about this is be careful in sharing only relevant images. For example, all of the writing and book-related memes and quotes are great, but then having so many about coffee may be a bit irrelevant. So use those interspersely. Don't do stuff that is maybe a little bit connected, but not entirely connected all of the time. So don't just have a post to go out just to have a post to go out. Make sure that it is really applicable. Also, be sure not to duplicate images and posts that are close together. I see quite a few on the Twitter page that include the same image and maybe are just 1 or 2 posts apart. Some cross-pollination of social media outlets is good, but one thing that we can really capitalize on is a variety in posts. So the same images and posts tend to be shared across all platforms, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Occasionally it is, but all the time, no. Because think about it like this. Why would somebody follow each individual platform if they can get the same information by just following one? So that might be a way to continue increasing those already great numbers and followers.
Awesome. So I do want to just last comment there, throw in a comment that there has been a ton of studies about quality of content over time. And like, I definitely would reiterate that taking the time to really do good content, even if it means doing less content, all studies have shown that it has a much better impact on SEO right now and social media success. So I would definitely agree with that comment for sure. Next site we're going to look at is Mabel's Labels. This should be interesting, and I think this is one that, if I remember properly, Anna had some thoughts on. Anna, do you want to start off on this one?
Sure, yeah, I'll jump in. So the first thing that I noticed is that they're not using the HTTPS protocol, which is something that I would definitely recommend switching to, especially since Google made that big announcement earlier this year or end of last year. Also, just a few technical things. I've noticed that they have a few redirect chains where it just continues to loop and loop and loop. So they might want to go in and clean that up a little bit. And then they're, just the basics of cleaning up their meta titles and meta descriptions. They're using a lot of duplicates, and that could have to do with some of their trailing /URLs. So they'll probably want to clean that up. And adding product schema data, I think that would definitely really help them to display differently within the search engines. And then Lauren, I'm not sure if you found it, but I could not find their robots file. So I wasn't sure if you noticed that while you were searching.
No, I'll try to find it right now, though.
Did you have any thoughts on anything? Was there anything that you saw that you were kind of really impressed with? I think it might be interesting to kind of also look at, not only what could be done better, but what do you feel like was done well on the site?
Yeah, I think from a mobile perspective, especially compared to the other sites that we were taking a look at, I felt from a mobile perspective, they did really nice. There were a few things that they could clean up, from a pop-up perspective. But I was really impressed with their UX design and how everything was laid out and structured from a site architecture perspective.
Awesome. Kaitlin, did you want to address some of the social media elements?
Yeah, definitely. So first thing, when I visited the site, the social media icons, I think preferably should be above the fold. And if not, definitely at the bottom footer, somewhere on the home page. I found them on the Contact Us page, but without the easily identifiable icons. So it did take me a minute to find their social icons. Everybody uses social media today, so make sure your social media platforms are immediately there to find. And, if people are going to your website first, that's the place that they're going to go. And then follow your page or like your Instagram accounts. The number one rule for me is to not have any social media presence become a ghost town. Their Google Plus page, which is linked to in that Contact Us page, hasn't been updated in about 6 months. So I would recommend removing the Google Plus page from the website if they're either not resources available to keep it updated, or if they found that the target audience isn't using Google Plus. And that's fine. If you don't think that Google Plus is working for your company, you don't necessarily have to have a Google Plus page just to have it. However, make sure to no longer provide links to those accounts. Instead, they should include their Instagram profile instead of Google+. They do have a regular Instagram presence and no link to it on the website. Again, as I mentioned with Grammarly, be sure to create versatility in posts between Facebook and Twitter, and even including Instagram or images on Instagram. Don't post the same thing across all platforms all the time. Mabel's labels, they have the asset of having stories of those who have been involved with their product. Take advantage of this. Crowdsource images or stories from customers in the real world. A lot of these labels I just are used with children's supplies. So take a picture of your child's supplies going to school or their lunch box or whatever these labels are being used in the real world, and then share those stories. It creates trust in the community, and it also encourages people to interact with your posts as well as continuing to share their photos with you because they want to be shown on your Facebook page.
Awesome.
You know what's pretty amazing about Mabel's labels is that this is an example of marketing first, search second, right? And by marketing, I mean like traditional forms of marketing like PR, introducing a product that there's not really much competitors out there for. So for example, just looking at the search volume, the searches for brand queries like Mabel's labels trump like any kinds of kids label, school label, kids name label, search volume numbers out there. So this is actually kind of a refreshing thing to see in the fact that they don't have a robots.txt along with like missing some other technical issues, yet they're still dominating for almost everything across the board that's label oriented, or at least kids label oriented, is great. Now, what I would say is that if Mabel's labels decides to go into something that's more like non-children's labels oriented, they'll probably start facing more, bigger, and better competition that's going to, they're not going to shoot to the top like they have in the kids world. And it looks like they're doing that with like bag tags and things like that. So something for them to definitely look into, especially if they're making a case to implement technical SEO fixes.
Awesome. I always love it when you can say, like, you know, when you're really dominating a space and you haven't, you know, you have a lot of room for improvement. That's always a very fun thing to hear. It's very positive. So jumping into next site to talk about, GTM payroll services. I don't know who wants to jump in first on this one, but by all means.
I'll jump in and do social media first. So GTM uses social media, it seems like in general, to communicate with potential customers about the people behind their process, which is great. I love the variety of posts, but one red flag I noticed was nearly all the links point directly to the GTM blog. So that's good if you have regular blog posts going out, that's very important. But be sure to retweet or reshare posts about or by clients. That could be one way to vary up the types of posts that you have going out. Instead of manually retweeting, which I noticed quite a few times, and that's where you have the letters RT and the @ handle before the post. Instead, actually retweet or quote tweet if you have something to add. That's another really good way to engage with your customer base already, as well as relevant customer base in your target demographic. These social media sites were very easy to find right there in the header of the website, and this avoids a lot of frustration on the part of your potential audience members or the people who are just like, hey, I remember I thought I added them on Facebook, but I didn't, and they can easily find it on your Facebook or on your website.
Awesome. Lauren, do you have any comments for GTM?
Yeah, it looks like GTM has invested a lot into things like tax calculators, payroll calculators, et cetera, like content and tools that are going to lead to incoming links, social sharing, and value. Yet they're all hosted off of the main domain and on their secure.gtm.com subdomain, which is kind of interesting. It looks like Secure is set up for their customers to log in, but typically you don't want your customer client login area ranking so well, and all of their link bait style initiatives are also hosted there as well. So possibly moving them over to the main site can add more diverse link equity into gtm.com, as opposed to dispersing that link equity between the main site and then a subdomain, which really doesn't have much additional content on it as well. So I would definitely look into doing that. And what's interesting here is this is a B2B and a B2C play, because it's it's a service for, like, you know, paying your babysitters and things. So looking into the link portfolio, I think a lot more can be done with reaching out to mom blogs, family sites, early entrepreneur style blogs, work from home style blogs, et cetera, et cetera. So if I'm GTM, I'm definitely going to look at that from a link portfolio and content marketing perspective. And again, congrats on a 3-letter domain. It's pretty wild. So that's really cool. But I see a lot more opportunity in the link building and content marketing realm of things, especially for something like a payroll solution, which may not be, I guess, the wildest thing out there to build links from, but you definitely have a lot of diverse markets that you can reach through content marketing and link acquisition.
Well, one of the things that I've also seen from the content marketing space on things like these is really spending time in support forums. So you can go to like payroll services and things like that and find out what the headaches people are having and provide kind of like guidance to solve those headaches, especially when you start looking at like nannies and a lot of these people who are looking at, they're probably on a smaller scale for managing a lot of this stuff. So there's a lot of opportunities from content there as well. I don't know if, Kaitlin, if you had a chance to look at it from a socials perspective.
Actually, I jumped in first on that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's
oh, no, it's fine.
Yeah, Brent, I'll pop in.
Sure.
So one of the first things I noticed about GTM is they have a lot of really great blog content. If you scan around the site and you look at the top and under household, it kind of takes you to a separate version of the site, I guess. And then under their blog, they have a lot of really great content. But one thing that they're missing out is they're not paginating the pages. So it can be kind of a sticky problem for search engines because of crawling inefficiencies and excessive duplicate content. So that's something that they might want to clean up for future use. And then another thing that I noticed for the whole site in general is that they weren't leveraging page caching. So if they start leveraging that, they can really reduce their page load time, you know, for their visitors and their browsers. And then it really will help some of their high traffic landing pages. So using tools like Quick Cache or JP Cache are some of the tools that I've used in the past.
Hey, you guys, we were getting a couple questions about the type of tools that you guys are using to pull this information that you're giving to the audience. Do you guys mind taking a few seconds each to tell the audience what you're using to get this information?
I use SEMrush as well as majestic.com. SEMrush is good for doing a basic crawl of a website and also giving an idea of what they're ranking for and their overall competitive landscape. Majestic is great at link tracking and also bringing in topical suggestions. So if you see a site is about one thing, but their inbound links have another topic, then that's usually a red flag. And then I like using the Pingdom page speed tester. Pingdom, it's like kingdom with a P. Because it breaks down all of the individual files that are slowing down the loading of a page. So those are my three.
Kaitlin, do you want to go or you want me to pop in?
Oh, you can pop in, and I actually don't have any tools that I've used. Mostly it's just looking at the different sites.
Oh, cool. Awesome. So I've got a few different tools that I love. I'm going to thank Annie Cushing for introducing me to GT Metrics. It's one of my go-to tools, and she's raved about it, so I definitely use that on a day-to-day basis. Deep Crawl is another one of my favorite reports for pulling really technical data, and Screaming Frog, that's my other go-to.
Yeah, I like Pingdom as well. I think that's a really good tool that Lauren was mentioning. That was the one that stuck out. SEMrush is really cool as well, but I definitely like Pingdom for being able to identify what's slowing your site down. I think it's an amazing tool. Okay, so jumping into the next slide, we're going to look at Yellow Pages Canada, yp.ca. And I know that Lauren definitely had some thoughts to share about this site in particular.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. And I'm also familiar with some of the Yellow Pages builds out there. And the one thing I found about Yellow Pages yp.ca is that the bulk of its ranking pages are on a subdomain called next home. So it's nexthome.yp.ca. When doing a site-specific search for nexthome.yp.ca, I noticed that in the Google results, we had the message that your site may be hacked on those results. So found that to be pretty interesting that Google is saying that, hey, the Canadian Yellow Pages is hacked to basically whoever searches for anything that's home related on the Canadian Yellow Pages. Now, what I then found was that the first thing I look for when I see a page may have been hacked is I do some queries around things like Bitcoin or Viagra or something like that, because typically when someone goes in and hacks a site, those are the kinds of mentions and links that you see. So what I found was that their main corporate blog, which is housed at nexthome.yp.ca / hold on, Brent, I'm getting it together for you. Just open up the link I sent earlier. Their main corporate blog is housed at nexthome.yp.ca /corporate/category/blog. And what it looks like to me is that someone forgot to either update a WordPress install or is using a plugin that's been compromised. That's gotten out there somehow. And so almost every single post on the Canadian Yellow Pages corporate blog is about jailbreaking or spam-oriented stuff. Nothing to do with what they're doing with home rentals or apartment rentals or anything. I mean, this is not corporate information. Basically, someone else has the keys to run their blog right now and is just populating it with spam content after spam content after spam content in an effort to build black hat links to third-party sites. So basically when that happens, that can weigh down. First of all, they've been hacked, right? Not a good thing, especially their corporate blog. And then secondly, when that happens, your screen's probably going to go crazy soon, Brent. But when that happens, is that it can weigh down the rest of the site, especially a site like this where Next Home runs off of a mix of like MLS listings, which duplicated content anyway, and other like non-original listings. So it's probably already teetering, right? And we see that like companies like Trulia, ForRent.com, others out there will use really strong content strategies to differentiate their listings from other listing sites out there on the web. It's really good for real estate agents to do that as well. But if there's a problem, then what's going to happen is it's going to weigh down everything. So sorry about the background noise. So they really have to take care of this ASAP. This is an urgent thing for the Yellow Pages to fix. They've been hacked.
Wow, that's never fun, but it definitely can happen from time to time. So definitely good to be able to identify that so that they can get that fixed. From a different perspective, Anna, did you have any things that you found still in the SEO sphere?
Just kind of the basics of on-page SEO. So a lot of duplicate descriptions and meta titles, and a lot of uppercase letters being used in the URLs, which it's going to be the nature of the beast because Yellow Pages is essentially a search engine of itself. So unless they have someone monitoring and managing tens of thousands of pages like that, I just don't think that they're going to be able to dot all those I's and cross all those T's. So just kind of, the basics of on-page SEO.
Kaitlin, did you have anything to add from a social media perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So first off, I had a really hard time finding Yellow Page Canada, their social media links on their website. They're only listed in a teeny tiny little text link at the bottom under mobile and tools. So I'd recommend not having them so tucked away. Took me a really hard time. It kind of looks like it's in the sitemap in the bottom, so not easily able to be found. On their Facebook page, I would say the long description on their About page should be shortened. If you feel like you need to include a disclaimer on your Facebook page, it should be much briefer. Many of the points in this one, for example, are in lines with the terms of service of Facebook posts in general. So this isn't a community group that is focused on like forum type posts. So it's somewhat unnecessary to have that in your About section. As well as like you could be, instead of doing this, you could be using this opportunity to communicate what kind of company you are. I know the Yellow Pages is obviously very well known in general, but reiterating that to potential customers is always a good opportunity to take advantage of. On their Twitter, I would say they do a great job retweeting, focusing on local businesses in their Twitter posts. I would also recommend sharing more from the hashtag that they list. It's hashtag Shop the Hood, which I guess is somewhat affiliated to Yellow Pages Canada. So retweeting more from that when relevant posts pop up, it will also create more awareness of the hashtag in general. I would also say feel free to integrate some of these same types of crowdsourced stories like they do on Twitter into their Facebook feed as well. Not necessarily all of the same ones, but similar ones that they don't necessarily share on Twitter, they can share on Facebook. So their Facebook page is more humanized and not just outbound links.
And like I always say, never forget that your header images are actually updates. And so you can use the description to put links, and you can utilize them in a way like a post as well.
Definitely.
Awesome. Good job. Let me get back to our presentation and we'll jump on to our next site. Mint State Gold. Mint State Gold. Who wants to jump in first?
I'll jump in first on this one because mine will be very short and sweet because they don't seem to have social media. After doing some digging, I did find an account that seems like it's theirs, Mint State Gold on Facebook, but it hasn't been updated since 2012, so 7 years ago. Again, with the ghost town thing that I mentioned earlier, viewers are very easily distracted on the internet. And when you, though they may be looking for your information, being taken to a page that hasn't been updated in years might confuse them and make them assume that you're no longer even in business anymore. So definitely make sure to keep those sites updated, have some sort of social media presence because people are, on social media all day, every day. Why not take that opportunity to reach out to new potential customers as well as your current customers and keep them updated with what you're doing?
Awesome. Lauren, Anna, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll go real quick. So, essentially it looks like the bulk of this site, 329 pages out of a total of 527 are all duplicate content and have duplicate descriptions, duplicate this, duplicate that. And they're all pages that were set up for the hosting of eBay reviews or other content that it looks like they're using for their eBay listings. I'm not sure if they're using a plugin that duplicates whatever they put on eBay back on their site or whatever it may be. But the problem is it's all the same thing over and over again. And what makes matters worse is that a lot of these pages also have an image that they're using for their eBay listings, which are linked to for some reason, there's a site called the Collector's Corner, which I'm guessing scrapes eBay and hosts eBay listings, all link over to Mint State Gold as well. So not only do they have just a huge percentage of their site of thin, duplicated content, which screws things up from a Panda perspective and a crawl budget perspective, right? Because Google's like, why are you serving me all of these almost 400 pages when there's only 50 good ones on your site? But at the same time, it's all being linked to. So it's almost like telling the Google bot, revisit, 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 even though this is the same duplicated content and duplicated images all over the place. So I would say that, whatever Mint State Gold is using to power their eBay reviews or whatever part of their site, look into that, because it's doing much more harm than good. And you can always, if you're using that to help manage your eBay marketing, you can always block that from Google visiting your site. This is one of the most misunderstood things that I see out there, is that there can be parts of your site that are launched with for eBay marketing, that are launched for email marketing, that are launched for social media marketing, and it's all the same stuff over and over and over again. There's no reason to let Google see that. So just by de-indexing those parts of your site, just tells Google, hey, don't visit these, just visit what's intended for users to visit from search, and they'll do much better. And then a lot of other issues on top of that as well. But that seems to be really the major one on their side of things.
Anything real quick before Anna, before you jump in, anything that you feel like they're really doing well, like that you would give them some attaboys for?
Their site would have been really great about 10 years ago, and it's really busy for me. And I mean, I'm not making a joke when I say this. If their target market is typically people that are 55 to 70 that are looking to invest in precious metals because they think that the world is falling apart, then they do that very well with their chart and everything else on the page. But I would kind of cut down on the clutter. It may work for their target market, it may not, but it's definitely very clutter heavy.
Awesome. Can we get Anna? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so the first thing that I noticed is when I popped onto their homepage, I used the Chrome extension for web developer and I disabled JavaScript. So I noticed that the site navigation was using JavaScript. So I would definitely recommend that they switch over to CSS if possible at some point. It's just kind of outdated and really in the best interest of the search engines and site owners to update that. And then another point to kind of what Lauren said is I noticed that a lot of their pages were 404ing, and I realized that it was because they were hosting some of their images on a separate website. And I don't know if it was a plugin or how the merge went with that hosting of the separate images, but it was creating all of these broken image URLs. So they're just stacking up hundreds and hundreds of broken pages. So they should definitely go through and clean that up. But those were the two big issues that I just thought would add on to what Lauren said.
Awesome. So I have something I want to mention, and that's just that, there is a really big space in coins for collecting and for investments and so forth. And if you look at the content section, it's just really, it seems like somebody's making an effort, right? You can see that there's content that's in here. There's an example on the screen of one that's just from today. So somebody's making an effort to write these articles, but there's a couple of things in here that you have to understand. One, the font is small, and the way that it's lined up with so much information just stacked on top of each other, that it just feels very intimidating. It's very hard for me to feel like diving into reading this when there's just so much surrounding similar font size, similar font, in the way it's stacked. It's important to note that a lot of times online especially, paragraphs become intimidating when they get too long. I wrote an article once about the one paragraph, one thought, one concept, one paragraph once before. But I mean, it's kind of proven through a lot of studies that having paragraphs that are too long just will cause people to skip them, and it doesn't give them a feeling that they can digest it in a decent amount of time. Images are extremely important, and so I mean, there seems to be content here that could do well, and it's well written, but it just needs to be positioned and formatted in a way that it could be shared through social. It could have some stuff. I think there's a lot of opportunity, from a content marketing standpoint within the space if it was cleaned up. And I would agree with Lauren that depending on what the goal is, because sometimes all of our recommendations don't matter if the client's got their target market down. right? And if they know what they're doing and they're confident with what they're doing and the sales are there. But from a standpoint of being modern and current and instilling a sense of trust in that space, I would definitely look at a little bit broader of a web design, a little bit more responsive. I would look at doing a redesign, and I would look at incorporating a couple fixes to some of the scripts and some of the 404s and a lot of those things that have been mentioned. So that's my thoughts.
Couple more notes, by the way. So I love the fact that they're doing content marketing and articles, but the articles that they're publishing seem to be either press releases or using some kind of a syndication program. And opening them up to Google is not always the greatest thing in the world, because you could fall into the omitted results category of the SERPs by doing so. So really look out for that. You might have some original content in here as well, like your daily updates, but it looks like a good amount of them are republished from third parties. Also,
Are they
your
not even,
homepage.
are they not even marking it as third party? Because this doesn't look like it's third party content.
Yeah, I don't know, but if you search them, you'll find that it's multiple
Yeah.
different news sites on the web have them. If you scroll to the bottom, it looks like this one is marked. Just to the bottom of the post.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So another thing I'd say is that your footer is almost in the hidden content category. It really looks like, I mean, that's kind of my comment from 10 years ago, but it really looks like a lot of stuffed, it comes across as being stuffed content that's almost the same font color as your background. And you're talking dark charcoal on charcoal here, and it really looks like you've stuffed this down here in an effort to rank for Google related searches, and just making this a white box or something that falls within the rest of the design of your site will keep you out of trouble. So just look into updating that, because right now it looks like a hidden content style play, and that may not even be the intent. Someone might have said, hey, can you add this content, please? It'll help us with search. And someone said, well, you know what? We'll do that at the bottom so it doesn't mess up the, the conversions on the homepage, right? But maybe taking the time or the investment into adding another box to your overall template will help, because if it wasn't intended to hide, it definitely comes across as being that.
Especially when you have like a clear footer, like this is a clear designed footer. And typically that should be the end of your content, especially when you have like, trade, your copyright marks and all right reserved. Those are typically at the very bottom. So to have that down there when you already have a footer definitely makes it look like that, even if that's not your intention. So I agree as well. Awesome. So let me get back to the presentation. Sorry, I was trying to get us a little bit more into the sites. So that kind of runs us through our review of the sites that we had picked. And I want to jump into some Q&A here in a little bit. We have a couple questions that have come through. If anybody has additional questions, by all means, jump in and add them now while I'm kind of speaking a little bit about our next webinar, which is going to be April 19th, 2 p.m. Eastern time, same time. We are going to be talking about how to execute scalable enterprise link building campaigns. Everybody wants to build links. It's a constant, I always tell myself, Lauren, at some point people are going to stop wanting to link build, but you know what? Years have gone by and we continue to still be very focused on link building, and for good reason, because it still really, really works. So we're going to have that discussion with Nicole DeLeon. I'm guessing that's how I say her name. She's founder and lead strategist at North Star Inbound. And so that is going to be a very interesting webinar. I highly recommend everybody take a moment and register. the buttons will be up on the site if they're not already live for the next webinar. Going to jump into some Q&A. At the end of Q&A, we'll of course be done with the webinar. I do want to mention we always send out a quick survey at the very end of the webinar. It's extremely helpful for us, so please take a moment, give us your feedback, what you like, what you don't like. We always take it to heart and we try our best to improve every webinar based on your feedback. So please give us your feedback, take the moment, and definitely sign up for this next webinar on April 19th. So diving into a couple questions. Let's see what we have here. Lauren, questions popped up, and I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in this question. How did you find out that the YP pages were hacked? Like, what did you do to be able to find those again?
Yeah, it's pretty boring, but what I did was, first I searched for all the subdomains hanging off of yp.ca, right? So when I searched for those subdomains, I just did a site-specific search in Google, site:/yp.ca. And I saw that all of the, Google typically will serve the major subdomains first. There's some other tools for finding all the subdomains that are on a domain, but Google will typically lay out the highest quality ones. And that's when I saw the nexthome.yp.ca and noticed that Google was serving a warning, not only in Webmaster Tools, but to anyone that finds that subdomain in Google saying that this site might be hacked, right? So first of all, the fact that Google is putting it out there is pretty bad. And then I got to thinking, well, they say that it might be hacked, but I don't necessarily see anything happening on the main area or, you know, one click in that's telling me that this is a hacked site. Not really seeing many spam links. So that's when I start looking for common spam terms. That's where, like, you know, Viagra, Cialis, Bitcoins, et cetera, and that's what I did. And then I finally found one post that was Bitcoin oriented, found the root blog, and then found that for that blog, or at least that blog category, all of the posts were hacked spam oriented posts. And, you know, I see this a lot. Well, I've seen this a lot reported with sites that typically use outdated WordPress plugins or have so many plugins that they don't have the time to check to see if that plugin is still really being managed by its owner. And what will happen from time to time is that plugin leak will happen. So hackers will find out that they can go into a site using a plugin that's broken or whatever it may be, or some loophole, go in and start adding lots of content. We saw this a lot with SQL injections, like 4 or 5 years ago, still up to now. Google still writes about it, where content and links can be added to your blog with, you know, spammy outbound links. So that's basically how I found it, just using the old-fashioned search for spam-oriented terms on the domain approach, and got into it. Usually I use that approach when I'm looking at sites that have things like forums, sometimes blogs which aren't updated much, and use a lot of subdomains, because typically most subdomains are there because of third-party partnerships. I don't think that's the case with NextHome. It looks like they're running most of the apartment rental stuff out of Yellow Pages, but check your third-party partners and plugins to make sure they're all updated and using best practices.
Awesome. Yeah, I've had similar experiences of finding stuff on my own sites before. It's definitely frustrating for sure. Question about the Mint State Gold site. How did you guys find out that they were hosting images elsewhere that led to broken pages?
Yeah, so I popped their URL into Screaming Frog and it started crawling their website. And you can sort by filters within Screaming Frog by URLs and images and things like that. So just by mining the site and looking at the URLs, you could see that the long URL, it would be, you know, www.mindstategold.com/the image, and then it would have the URL to the site that the image was hosted on. So if you separated the two URLs, they were both very clean URLs, but something within that merge or deployment of hosting those images elsewhere, something went awry. So it's not necessarily bad to host your images on another site, except especially for this size of this site, because they have so many images and so many pages that it's good for them to host somewhere else. But just connecting those dots properly and working with the developer to make sure that things are being implemented properly before going live would save them a lot of trouble for having to go back and redo all these 404 errors.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree. There's good situations to host images elsewhere, but even Google for a while was offering to host your images and stuff like that for you. It was just, it's a matter of making sure it's set up properly, right?
Right. Exactly.
Social question: what is the best way to partner with a social media influencer?
I would say that this definitely varies by the realm of social media influencer that you're looking for, but always keep in mind just kind of that networking mentality. Like when you're in an industry that's very in-person based, you go to networking events and you just genuinely get to know the people who work in those industries. So going to conferences and getting to know people in a directly internet way, follow them on social media, reply to their to their posts, comment on their blog posts. Make sure to do it in a non-spammy way though. Ask relevant questions if you have them, or comment with relevant comments. Definitely don't just like immediately start like selling your stuff like, hey, I have this tool that, you mentioned tools in your last blog post. Would you like to feature it? Don't be salesy at first. After you gain a relationship with these people and they, start respecting your opinions, then you can start with those like, hey, I do this as well. Like, could you give me some pointers on this? And then, a month or two later, after you have had many conversations with them, you can say, oh, well, actually, I do this. Would you like to collaborate on a blog post? And asking for collaboration and reaching out in that way is a really good way to do it because it's good for you, but it's also good for them because it's continuing to get their name out there. So make sure to keep in mind what is the benefit of that for them to talk to you, and definitely capitalize on that.
Nice. A couple questions have come in around React. Have you seen any sites when you were doing the audits that were built with React or Angular JavaScript? Are the pre-rendering options effective, or do you recommend to rebuild? Another question also asks about using any experience with single-page apps using React and if that can hurt SEO. Do any of you have experience with React or Angular JavaScript at all?
I haven't personally worked with that. I don't know if anyone else on the panel has.
Yeah, not firsthand, not from a tech perspective. I haven't. I worked on projects that use Angular, but other people on my team have taken care of most of that. My basic understanding is out of the box is not great, and you really want to do some tweaking after the fact. Most of the sites that we worked on were fairly basic.
Awesome. Another interesting question, kind of one that comes up from time to time, AMP pages and mobile sites. What are the ups and downs of a full AMP site for all mobile needs?
Well, the benefit of using AMP really is the ability to bypass all the hurdles that you would typically have in a development setting with speeding up your site. Like if you looked at some of the examples that we had today, they weren't all just mom and pops. We had some pretty big businesses like Grammarly, the Yellow Pages, Mabel's Labels. And sometimes doing something as well, for most of those, we did speed tests, and for most of those, they got like a C or a D, and had some issues and caching issues and things like that. Just from experience, working within some companies or with dev teams, sometimes just things are slower. So if you're running a site on your own and you want to speed it up, it can be pretty easy. But if you have multiple different divisions and needs and things like that, sometimes you really have to fight those battles just to do basic things like caching or whatever it may be, compressing images, using a CDN, et cetera, et cetera. From an AMP perspective, if you can use a tool like I think it's AMP for WordPress, where it's almost ready for prime time out of the box. You just need to do a lot of tweaks afterwards and testing. It can mean that you can make that experience faster when people are finding your website via their mobile devices to serve them content. Now, through most studies I've seen and most reporting I've seen, and coming from folks, a lot of folks that work in the publishing and news space, they don't necessarily see a benefit to using AMP outside of content yet. So point being is that if you are running a WordPress blog or a blog that's indexed in Google News or whatever it may be, AMP does appear in the normal search results, but they're not necessarily seeing a bump yet on anything unless it's news oriented or say current event quality deserves freshness ranking oriented on the AMP side. It can be a nice fix if the rest of the site is slow and you have control of your blog to get AMP integrated. And really the verdict is still out there, because I'm seeing more of a trend now of people making the case to make their site faster than AMP internally and not use AMP than to use AMP. So that seems to be the new trend in terms of speeding your site up so you're as fast as Google is, and then you don't need to hand over the keys to your content to Google.
That's interesting, Lauren. I just wanted to add to that too, because I've had a lot of questions, a lot of clients come up to me and ask me, about page speed and AMP. And it's important to know that AMP is not a ranking factor, but page speed is. So, taking that into consideration whenever you're deciding to switch to AMP or add AMP. It's also important to consider that just because your competitor is running an AMP page, that doesn't necessarily mean that the content on that AMP page is better than your content. So just some things to think about whenever you're implementing AMP pages.
One last comment I'd like to throw in about AMP is just that, without getting into the specific conversations, Google is focusing heavily on AMP. And a lot of internal staff has been reassigned to AMP projects. There's a lot on the plate still to be released as far as what AMP is looking to do, and it's definitely something that's very important as a whole for Google in the way that you interact with web pages. So I always think it is important to look at a company's focus. A lot of times we talk about Google Plus. Is it still relevant today? Well, nobody's working on Google Plus anymore, really. I mean, a handful of people probably are, but it's not a major focus within the company, where AMP is the major focus right now within Google. So I would take that into consideration when you're thinking about where you want to invest some time, improving your site. That said, I feel like we've probably run to the end of our time. I want to thank everybody for your questions and for submitting your site to be audited, and for letting us kind of ramble on about all our thoughts. I do want to reiterate again that we have a survey that will come up that we would like you to fill out, and we have some unanswered questions, and if you want to continue to ask questions, through Twitter with the hashtag SEJ Think Tank, we'll try to make sure we get all of these questions together and answered when we do a recap post, which we will do on Search Engine Journal relatively soon. That will have the entire webinar, as well as notes and tools and all of the things that you want to be able to take away from this time that you spent with us. So I want to thank everybody again for joining us. Please join us again on April 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, talk about link building campaigns. And thank you, Anna, Kaitlin, and Lauren for spending your time with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.